How do you know your identity? Is there some sort of magic code that teaches us that we're supposed to learn that how we figure out who we're going to be and what we're going to do with the rest of our life and how people are going to look at us? You see, I thought I figured that out at a very young age, and I thought I knew what my identity would be forever. I thought this was the only thing that I would ever do. It was the only thing that I was good at. It was the only thing that I cared about. It was the only thing that I even practiced. I was a baseball player. Now, I would practice day in and day out to work on my skills, defense, offense. It's all I cared about. I just wanted to follow that dream of playing baseball. My whole goal was to get a university scholarship, and then out of university, I would get drafted and play in the major leagues and make millions of dollars for the rest of my life playing the sport that I wanted to play. Sounds like a pretty cool dream, right? Well, it wouldn't happen that way because I cared about baseball so much, but I neglected every other area of my life, and I paid absolutely no attention to it. So when it came to the point I was in my 5th year of high school, and I was supposed to be accepting university scholarships, I was nowhere near in the position to be able to do that. You see, of the 30 credits that I needed to graduate, I had half of them. I had 15 credits going into my 5th year. Now, I don't know about you, but I don't know of any university who's accepting anyone who's got half the credits that they need to graduate already 1 year over the time that they're supposed to do it in. And so that's the position I was in. And so what became real to me is that I wasn't going to achieve this dream. And it hit me like a ton of bricks. I was not prepared for this. This was the only thing that I ever wanted in my entire life. It was the only thing that I ever cared about was playing baseball and going and playing Major League Baseball. But because I neglected my schoolwork, that wasn't able to happen. And I didn't know how to cope with this problem. I had no coping mechanisms. Well, I guess you could say I did, but they were the wrong ones. And I started doing things like smoking pot, because it would just help me numb the pain. It made me feel nothing. Like, I didn't care about anything. I woke up and I would smoke some weed, and I would smoke some weed for the next 13 hours until I fell asleep. And it got to the point where I couldn't even fall asleep unless I was high. And now I started to make some new friends, because all of my friends, I watched them go away to university because they got their marks and they finished high school. And I wasn't at that point. So now I was here and had to make some new friends. And I was hanging out with all these stoners and potheads and kids who had dropped out of high school, because that's what I did too. When I realized I wasn't going to go play pro baseball, I just dropped it all. I didn't care about anything. I didn't have any ambition. I didn't have any goals. Everything just kind of fell apart for me. And I started making some really poor decisions. And this one group of people that I started hanging out with introduced me to another group of people. And this group of people, they weren't just smoking weed. They're using a lot of other drugs. And I started using prescription painkillers. I started using Xanax, Percocet, oxycodone, until it progressed into cocaine and crystal meth. And it got to the point where I was using these drugs 4, 5, 6, sometimes even 7 nights a week. And I was literally living my life high. It was at 20 years old, I was living my life high. And I loved it. I thought there was no problem with this. I thought this was so cool, because I had a group of people that accepted me, I had friends that I could talk to, I had people that were pushing me to do this. Yeah, it's fine, go ahead, let's party. And that's all I ever wanted to do. And it got me to the point where after a certain amount of time, I needed to go see a doctor. It's been maybe 2 years since I've had a regular checkup, and we were just going to do a random checkup. All the tests, all the blood work, saliva tests, all this stuff, because I hadn't seen him in so long. And so I do the test, it's all good. He calls me the next day, and he says, I got the results. Do you mind coming up to the office next week or sometime this week so I can read them to you? And I say, yeah, no problem, sure. And now I knew I wasn't living right at this point in my life. I knew I'd made some poor decisions, but by no means was I ready for the information that I was about to receive. So as I step into the office, the doctor starts this appointment like this, and he says, negative for this, you're negative for this, you're negative for this, you're negative for this, but by the way, young man, you're HIV positive. And so I was not prepared to deal with this in the slightest. Nothing in my life has prepared me to deal with this pain. I had no idea what to do. I felt so low, and I had no idea how to get back up. So what do you think I did? I stayed low, and I played low for a long time. And I continued to make poor mistakes, so much that I even ignored the fact that I had HIV. I didn't get treatment, I didn't get medication. I walked out of the doctor's office that day, and I ignored that he even said that to me. Until one day, about 1.5 years later, of me continuing to party and use drugs and live this lifestyle, I get a call from Toronto Public Health. And the gentleman on the other line says, "Is this Michael?" I say, "Yes, sir." He says, "You are on an emergency list of people who have not been in contact for the last year due to your fatal illness. If you don't come in immediately, you're at risk for dying." That shook me a little bit. That snuck into my subconscious, and I was not ready to die. I knew this. I was a rebel, I didn't like life, and I was upset and all this stuff. I was depressed, but I didn't want to die, and I knew that. So I went to the doctor's office. The doctor said to me, we did the blood work all over again, because it had been about 2 years since that time, a year and a half. We did the blood work all over again. And the doctor read me the results, and she said that, sir, if you hadn't been here in the next 2 months, you might have contracted AIDS. Now, I'm not going to explain to you guys the difference between HIV and AIDS, but there is one. AIDS is somewhat of a death sentence. If you get to the point where you contract AIDS, you're most likely going to die of an AIDS-related symptom. And I was about 2 months away from having my CD4 count get that low. And so I looked at this as a bit of a blessing, and I got on medication right away. And also, I didn't change my life. I still kept partying. I still kept living that lifestyle. I felt like the medication was a bit of a safety blanket. Until one day, I had been out for maybe 4 or 5 nights, not been home, and I was just using drugs. I was hanging out with prostitutes and strippers, and it was just what I was doing, and I was loving it. And I got home one morning to my grandmother's basement where I was living at the time, and I snuck into the basement downstairs, and all I can remember is sitting on the floor of my bedroom with my head in between my legs, looking at the carpet, and I just uncontrollably started crying. And I started thinking about every single emotion that I'd ever been through my entire life. And it was in that moment that I realized I will never feel validation on my own identity when I'm trying to look for somebody else on the outside. I can only ever validate my own identity when I do it from within. And I did it right there in my darkest moment. And I said to myself, I'm not a failure, I'm not a high school dropout, I'm not a drug addict. I'm Michael Lamprey, and I'm so much more. Thank you so much.